Well, hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Colter, Mike, good to see you guys. We're excited to have everyone here to talk a little bit more about smart properties and smart homes. It can be kind of a nebulous topic and a little bit intimidating too, because even if you're pretty tech savvy, there's a lot that can go wrong, and it's important, from a guest experience standpoint, that you really have your tech within the property, set up in as easy of a way for the guest to interact with as possible. So today we want to talk about that. We're going to talk about using Hostfully devices. We're going to have some great talks, some great conversation back and forth. I am joined today by Mr. Colter Robinson, our Senior Director of Biz Dev over on the Hostfully side, and really excited to have Mike Louderback with us, Managing Partner of NexAero Vacation Rentals, a customer of Hostfully, a customer of Hostfully Devices, someone I've been honored to work with for a couple of years now. Mike, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to dig right in. Well, before we get to the meat and potatoes, and we're going to let Mike share his experience and really, share kind of the process that he's undergone. Colter, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'll let you just talk about a couple of slides here.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, Bryce. And obviously, Mike, it's wonderful having you on here. Excited to hear your feedback. And I decided to join both of you on the mustache this week, but you've both got me beat. So I got a couple more weeks to grow this out. But that aside, we'll dig into things a little bit here. I did just publish a poll. So if you guys want to participate in that poll, just trying to get a little bit of feedback as to where everyone on this call is at in terms of smart home technology devices, whether that's with Hostfully or someone else. But before we get Mike's kind of story and all of his feedback, because he's been a Hostfully super user with devices and guidebooks and the PMP, just quickly want to review the basis of what we're going to be discussing here today. And if you're on this call, you're obviously already a property management platform user of Hostfully. So just want to give you all some insight as the benefit of Hostfully devices. And of course, if you're not already using our guidebooks, even connecting that to guidebooks, so you've got that full user experience, you've got the full tech stack of Hostfully built in for those additional automations. But real quick, the key features for Hostfully devices is remote device management. This is aimed at just automating the guest experience, but also optimizing that guest experience. Mike is going to allude to this, but the guest experience starts right when they step foot in the property or even beforehand getting access to that property. So setting yourself up for success for a good guest experience. Customizable device settings. This can really help save all of you money. You've got a bunch of guardrails that you can set with these devices. You've got a bunch of parameters. So really customizable settings. And then all the device integrations, just so you're all aware as to what you can have the option to use with Hostfully devices. And of course, that seamless platform integration with it being directly integrated into your Hostfully PMP account. And of course, guidebooks as well. So with that being said, just a quick overview here of some of those devices we're working with. We will drop a link in the chat so you guys can have a full list of on our website of all those devices so you can confirm what you have is available within this integration. But with that, Mike, I'm going to hand it off to you and kind of let you introduce yourself and your background here. So take it away.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Hostfully reached out to me to participate in a little bit of a chat about my experience with Hostfully devices. We've been managing properties for about 5 years. I have a longer history of running large operations. So when we got into this, the question really was, how are we going to scale around managing all these properties? And I think for us, we were already playing in automation, just basic stuff with houses. We've been playing with it for years, but it really came down in the end to needing every stay to be a 5-star from the start, right? And I look back at, our sort of rocky earlier road, the way we started with just one property and the things that used to cause us pain. And I've been taught over the years that you got to sort of talk to the pain, right? So what is an operator's pain? Well, for us, it was, getting phone calls from guests that they couldn't get in the door, right? And then we had to walk them through finding, a lockbox or a key under a rock, Yeah, we've done that, right? But it was stuff like that. And the worst was when you're like on an airplane and you start getting texts on the airplane Wi-Fi and you're trying to figure out how to communicate with folks, right? So these were some of the pains that we were dealing with. Folks complaining that they couldn't find the house or there was no light at the front door. We have properties up in northern Arizona, so it's cold. People get to the property, it's freezing, it's snowing. We have properties in Flagstaff, so we're at 7,000 feet, and they walk into the house, and it's just as cold in the house, right? That's not a great way to start. So for us, we were sort of clunking around with trying all these different early systems. I mean, literally stuff that was coded by third parties, and the stuff was clunky. It was unreliable. It caused us a lot of stress, to be, very, I think, transparent. And as we inadvertently grew, because this wasn't our original intent as we started this, right? So a year into it's when we sort of realized that we got to figure this stuff out. That's when we started working with Hostfully and Brise, and we started trying to figure out how we were going to make some of this easier. And that's where Hostfully Devices came in, right? And it literally took that pain off of our plate. I mean, I just tell you, we were flying back from Alaska 2 weeks ago, quick trip. And I was getting these great messages on my phone. Codes were programmed, lights just turned on, thermostats were setting for us automatically. And I'll kind of wrap here, but it used to be really hard to do this stuff, folks. I mean, it was, if you go back 10 years and we were automating our personal homes, it wasn't easy. You had to almost know how to write code. Now it's gotten so easy, and Hostfully has done such a good job, and it'll be the next slide we get to here. They've done such a good job of integrating, yes. And this is just sort of scratching the surface, folks, but the number of IoT, devices, Internet of Things that Hostfully Devices can connect to, it is literally staggering. And when I started with Hostfully and the individuals that developed this, there were a handful, right? It was locks, thermostats. Well, now it's locks, it's garage doors, it's thermostats, every type of thermostat, right? We're even doing neat stuff now with connecting split systems that don't have Wi-Fi, right? Because so many houses have older splits. You've got smart lock boxes. Igloo is one of the companies, but you have properties that you can't get a lock on, right? You can't put a Yale or Slage. So we just throw these lock boxes up, and they are phenomenal. They just program remotely, right? We haven't done the smart safes, but that's a fantastic idea. You can do light bulbs, switches. Again, if you go back to the theme, start every stay as a 5-star. And I'm going to copyright that, so please don't. You guys,
cheers, Mike.
In all seriousness, those are the three things that cause us stress, right? I want lights on, I want temperatures good, and I want guests to have contactless entry. And that's where we get 5 stars every time. Yeah. So just kind of jumping to smart locks, the capability has grown phenomenally. So you ultimately have the ability to tie this whole system back directly into Hostfully. You collect the phone numbers either through platform or through pre-arrival forms. You can set PIN code lengths. Once you get all that, you have the ability to set check-in times and offsets. So if you got guests that like to show up early, set the offset for 15 minutes so they feel like they get a little earlier. If you're fairly hardcore and you want to charge for that early check-in, set it for 0 offset. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you manage this. We create an additional revenue stream in early check-ins because it typically results in more work for us. So we'll typically set ours at 0, and if people want to purchase, then we adjust. You can set the checkout offsets also. So that's a great ability to, if you want to set it at 0, so, you're sort of sending a message that people need to honor the checkout times. So again, a lot of added flexibility here for locks. I'm just scratching the surface.
Yeah. And I'd even imagine security purposes with those offsets as well, making sure that no one can access the property once that checkout time has taken place.
Colter, you were hitting it right on the head. We are taking on more and more owners. I can't tell you how many people use a static code.
Yeah.
So look, 99% of the people you book are great, okay? But it's that 1% that, they keep that code and they come back to your house. No more worries. Those codes are deleted. They're gone.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, Mike, we have a question here from the audience. I think maybe you've run into this, but I'm curious. And it's with relation to like, what if the internet's down or the power's down, or how do you deal with those kinds of situations?
That's a great question. So the codes get pushed out earlier. So they may already be there, and then they turn on, particularly with the igloos. Every setup, or so smart locks now have backup codes. So those are stored permanently. So if you did not have Wi-Fi in the coding period or the programming push period, you just shoot them out a backup code, right? And if you really want to, you can write it into your messaging, right? So you could, now I don't recommend doing that, but you have that backup code. So
yeah, excellent.
I hate to say this because this will probably jinx me a bit, but once we have this running, and again, it's very simple to set up. I honestly can't remember. The only time we've ever had a problem with a code is when somebody gives us a phone number that they don't typically use and it didn't get set up right. But other than that, I mean, it seems to work 99.99% of the time. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. And that feature makes it a lot easier, obviously, Mike, too, with just really defaulting to the last four of the phone number for the guest. So they're not having to remember or look back at their phone, back to kind of the 5-star experience you mentioned in the beginning.
Yep. And we built all that into our messaging. So once we get to like 5-day, 3-day messaging, and then we do a day of SMS text message, we just build that ULEAD PIN code, whatever the variable is. We build that into everything now. It's all connected. So it's super easy to push that last 4 through.
Yeah. And to just add to that real briefly as well, you will be able to see within the Hostfully Devices interface if there's a door code that failed to send, whether that's because the lock is dead or the internet has gone down. And you can generate the backup codes as well. So you've got a couple of automations in place that will notify you, so you have awareness around that before that guest actually checks in.
Yep. And it's super easy to go into the Hostfully Devices interface and just do a refresh. If you put in a backup code, boom, refresh, it pushes right out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else, Bryce, on your end, or Mike, on the locks before we move on to thermostats here?
Unless there's more questions from the audience.
If questions come along the way, we'll answer those.
Yeah,
there's one there. At what point are you warned about the low batteries? So within the Hostfully Devices interface, you can actually set that percentage as to when it's going to alert you when the battery reaches, for example, 15%. You can have that parameter set up.
Yep.
Beautiful. Good. All right.
So the next big piece for us is thermostats. And we live in an area where a number of our properties use propane. And so propane is probably one of the more expensive forms of heating. So it became a real need for us to manage thermostats. And we just couldn't rely, guests are great, right? But doesn't matter what message you send, they read a fraction of it. About half our folks were setting thermostats to where we asked them. They were running them too high, too low, leaving them on. Cleaning crews, they're busy, so they usually missed it. This was a game changer for us, frankly. We were able to set the guest mode, so where thermostats would be before folks checked in. Again, the offset's critical here. So if you kind of know your house, know your home, for us, one of our bigger properties takes about 2 hours to get to a comfortable temperature. So we'd set an offset for 2 hours. It allowed us to sort of maximize our energy efficiency or energy usage. This ties in really nicely too, by the way, to environmental initiatives, particularly if you have European renters. They are great, but they're very conscious of what you're doing to reduce footprint. This is a great way to do it. So we set our offsets. You got to go in and do this, set it up the first time. You set sort of your limits of where temperatures are in the house, where you want to be at. And then this is important. After a certain period of time, you can allow the thermostat to kick back into auto mode. normal program. So if you use an Ecobee or a Google Nest or things like that that are fairly robust in terms of their own coding, their own setups, and you like to have that level of control or capability, it'll just kick right back in, right? So that's really nice. When the guests are leaving, you push it back into vacant mode. For us, we set everything around 84 in the winter, in the summer down to like 55. Just, you got to avoid frozen pipes. But that also brings not only the energy peace of mind, but it also brings sort of that piece I was just talking about, making sure the pipes are not freezing, things like that. Again, this is a 5-star start, folks. When a guest walks in, and like for our guests, they're coming out of 0 temperatures, and they walk into a nice warm house, I don't have to use that bottle of wine we left out as an exchange for forgiveness just yet, right? So this is a big deal. You get a lot of control, and you'll see later we can actually give control to the guests, which, if the guest wants to start warming up before they get out for a picnic or they're downtown, they can turn it back up. So this is important too. A lot of thermostats have the ability to lock out, and you can create sort of limits. If you don't have that, or you want a simpler way to do it, you can set up a guardrail. So you can basically sort of define where the thermostat limits are going to be, right? So we do this, and then if we have a guest, and you'll have 1 in 10 that says, I want the house at 90, then you can decide if you want to trade that capability for a star, and we usually do, and that's rare. But again, guardrails are really important because it helps bring a little bit of control to where folks are setting thermostats. Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Mike. A question here, just, I know you guys get pretty wide ranges in kind of swings in temperature. So kind of that transitioning from like your unoccupied or occupied temperatures, have you noticed like pretty smooth transition, or, I guess just any other observations on that too?
Yeah. So so you've got your cold months, your warm months, your shoulder months. We will keep it in one particular mode. When we get to sort of the shoulders, or if we've got swings like we do way up at high altitudes, we'll just push it into auto, and then it is pretty smooth. But then the nice thing is this will do all of the, sort of guest and vacant management, but I'll still pull up my Ecobee just to check things occasionally, right? I'll just pull up the app. But it's surprisingly, once you spend a little time setting things up, and we go back and tweak them here and there, it is surprisingly robust, reliable. Every once in a while I'll check, like, oh wait, I forgot. Let me see if the house is, it's 100 degrees outside. Let me check if the house is, and it's at 72.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question.
Mike, we didn't really touch on this before, but just popped back into my head on kind of cleaners accessing the property. And obviously we can provide a cleaner code. We can set that in Hostfully Devices, but we didn't mention that. So just wanted to throw that out. Do you use the offset at all in, kind of keeping the thermostat, where it was at during occupied for your cleaners, or how do you manage that?
We don't use the offsets for that because our cleaners are dynamic, as are most cleaners. They know when they've got to be there before the next check-in. So unless it's a hard turn, they won't typically be there. So I'll show you later, we'll either give them control through the set app, or they can just override when they get there.
Great. Got it.
And my only other note here too is for those who are managing on behalf of other owners, this thermostat, guardrails, and parameters probably are a great selling point to homeowners you're managing on behalf of, from the perspective of being able to set or to save them money, not wasting money on either heating in the winter or cooling in the summer. So just another great selling point that can help you be unique amongst the competition of other PMCs. Yeah,
if I guessed, Colter, I would say, depending on where we're at, we have properties from sea level to 7,000 feet.
Yep.
We have saved as much as probably 25+%.
Wow.
And especially with propane and cold seasons and people leaving stuff on. So I've had $800 bills for propane in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah. That's remarkable and a huge selling point. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Great. And we've gotten some questions just as people are going through about devices and adding devices, whether it's locks or thermostats. And I can tell you, it's definitely something that we look at every single month. Every month we're working and adding on new devices. And so I see a few mentioned here specifically, and Colter and I will definitely follow up with our team on those and just check on the outlook to get some of those integrated. But we are continuing to add, devices as new ones also continue to come out, and it's just kind of ever changing. So always something that we're moving forward. So thanks for sharing those with us.
Beautiful. Well, let's move on to some light automation here. And I'm curious to hear, Mike, what you're doing with lights.
Yeah, so this was the third component. So keep in mind, there's a lot of automations, and we do more than the three we're talking about here. But the lights are sort of the trifecta. This is the third one. Again, 5-star start of stay, lights, temperature, locks. So entry, comfort, being able to see. It is really easy to add lights, whether they're Wi-Fi or you're running them through a SmartThings hub or Habitat or all these different hub type setups. You can see a couple of the interfaces here. Very simple for lights. You can set them up with an offset. So for us particularly, what we'll usually do is turn on the entry light, and then we'll flip on a few lights inside, just so when people walk in, they're not fumbling for light switches. And I'll usually flip those on about an hour beforehand. You can see to the left there. And then when they leave, we'll usually flip them off about an hour afterwards. Same thing. But again, arriving at a lighted entry, it's kind of like another 5-star. It's another way to a 5-star stay, right? So
absolutely. And Mike, I'm curious too, because I know there's both the light switches that you can have automated or the light bulbs. Are you using a combination of the two or one or the other? I'm curious of.
We do all switches, because for me personally, I'm a DIY electrician.
Yep.
So I slap them in pretty quick, but the light bulbs are super easy to do. You can do plug-in receptacles. So if you want to just plug in a little module and plug a standing lamp in, they're just as easy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the only reason I asked, someone brought up the other day the fact that if you had a smart bulb, it's great. But if someone turns off that switch, that smart bulb is going to be inaccessible at that point. So I was curious. Yeah. It makes sense why you're doing primarily the light switches in that case.
Yeah, and do I have 15 seconds to tell a funny story?
Absolutely. You got ample time.
Okay, so we literally have a number of floodlights on properties that are critical, especially, again, up in our high altitude. We have a property like in a phenomenal wooded setting with pinyon pines. People will, for whatever reason, guests sort of do what they do. They kept turning off the floodlight. So then the motion sensor, to your point, Colter, didn't work. And people were driving up and they couldn't quite see the house. So I put an automated switch in, and I wrote a simple routine and automation. We didn't do that in devices per se, but I needed to do this so devices would always work. We wrote a routine that just basically said, if someone turns it off, turn it back on in 5 seconds. So that allowed us to then continue to use Hostfully Devices, so we could flip those lights on before people got there. So, again, you're connecting into sort of a broader ecosystem now. When you get into this automation, it's not just what you can do with devices, it's the broader stuff you kind of ease into because it's so easy now.
Absolutely.
Okay,
that makes sense. And that's a real world example of why maybe those switches are the way to go.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, moving right along here too, I want to make sure we discuss the Set app for a little bit, especially from the host perspective, but also the guest perspective. So Mike, I'm curious to hear your feedback here.
Yeah, so this one, I will tell you, we're getting more and more adoption. So what this really is the guest's ability to control their stay and experience. right? This is the guest's ability. I said this earlier. We will set a thermostat or a light before they get there, but once they're into their stay journey, we give them the ability with this really simple web-based app to, again, you know, if you're running Ecobee thermostats, they will either they'll detune after someone leaves, they'll turn down. Well, if a guest is downtown and they want to warm the house up, they pull up the set app. We send out a link through messaging. They can turn up a thermostat. They can turn a light on. What if they got a relative that's coming to the house and they don't want to give their PIN out just yet? You can just open the door for them. So the set app is an incredibly powerful guest-facing capability that essentially allows the guest sort of that same capability that you as operators have. And if you could just go back for 1 second, this came up earlier. I know it's hard to see, but in the bottom right-hand corner, you have the ability to assign roles. So if you want to assign a handyman, a guest, a cleaner, right? So you could set this up and give the setup to your cleaner so they could also turn on lights at night if they got to do a late cleaning, things like that. So the amount of control that you as an operator have and then the guest has, this is sort of next level in terms of really letting the guest or giving the guest that feel that, and by the way, sorry, it gives them that control sort of experience. But as I stay in Hilton's lately, because I have to do that occasionally, Hilton has given that in a lot of their hotels now. So you pull up the Hilton app, when you get to the stay, same thing. So that's sort of what we're competing with now. So, you know, in my mind, again, you know, staying at a short-term rental is always going to be better than a hotel. But this gives you the ability to say we have those same systems. Yeah, this is another example of what the guest will see with a when they pull up the set app. Yeah.
And I know people, and I'll plug this here as well. You get creative with how you give guests access to this, Mike. I think you're using StayFi, and you've got an interface built out in there to get them access to the setup. If anyone's using guidebooks, you can do that same thing.
Yeah.
But it goes back to driving that 5-star guest experience. And I think the more control sometimes you give the guests with those guardrails in place, it is that 5-star experience.
Well, and now with all the work that you guys have done, you can push it through messaging. There's variables. You can push it through the guidebook. You can push it through resource pages like we use. The guest should have no problem finding this. It's that easy now.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And for those of you who are using our guidebooks or aren't yet, but have explored them in the past, this is just kind of a quick snapshot I took from my digital guidebook where I've got my house manual section here and I've got the smart device controls within there. They click on that. It's taking them right to this page where you saw here, where they can go ahead and open the garage door or adjust the lights or the thermostats, whatever it might be. So you can really make this as simple as one click of a button from the guest perspective, and it's going to go a really long way. And the other thing I'll just point out quickly on this screen is for the gaining access instructions within your guidebooks. If you're using Hostfully Devices, we can push that unique door code for each reservation right into the gaining access instructions. Again, just to make that a much more seamless experience. They're not fumbling through emails looking for that. They've got it right within their guidebook as well. So just some things to keep top of mind, just to, again, drive those 5-star reviews. But Bryce, Mike, anything else to add in terms of the set app here?
No, I mean, we're using the guidebooks also, and we've got those integrated in. So this is something I learned. So I'm going to start putting this in the guidebook also.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Beautiful.
Yeah, and Colter, one thing I'll mention is that we're going to make it a little bit easier. We're about to add kind of a default option, for people to be able to enable the devices set app from right within the guidebooks. Today, it's a couple steps to add it. We're going to make that really seamlessly integrated here very shortly. We have kind of the beta version out of that. So there's more good stuff coming there too, Mike, for you.
That's awesome.
Beautiful. And then, Mike, I know you kind of alluded to this earlier, and it goes back to the guest experience, but just how easy it is to access the door code, both within Hostfully from your calendar or from the pipeline, but also just making sure it's communicated to the guests via the automated messaging, which is really just that lead PIN code variable that folks can find there as well. So beautiful. All right. And then otherwise, Mike, I'm
Mike,
not.
have you found, uh, sorry, Coulter, just on this topic, because people may be a little bit curious about this. Have you found any best practices with, are you leaning more on email or text message for sharing, codes or any information with guests?
Yeah, I will say, because these are such a big deal, this is normally, I, I have noticed that this is where the largest sort of guest angst is. Like, we have written this into, let's say we send out 5 messages. Once we get past the initial welcome message, every message has this in there in some detail. And what we did start doing recently, because there are those rare occasions where, for whatever reason, the number the last 4 of their code doesn't work, we send out a note now that says your door code will be the last 4, or if there's an issue, a randomly generated code, because that's what happens. If for some reason the last 4, this is rare, very rare, but if you've got a previous guest that has the same last 4 as another guest, right, it won't let you program it. And so then it'll generate a random code. And that has worked for us phenomenally. So people know one of those 2 is going to work, and we just use the variables in the messaging. So we do emails, we do SMS, and then we have it in the guidebook.
Got it.
Thanks, Bryce. Good question.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. And then moving along here, I think we've touched on a lot of the items that we were hoping to get to today, but just to make it easy for folks to conceptualize where to start with Hostfully Devices, it's just going to be within your integrations page within the property management software. And you can click on the Hostfully Devices Management Console. It's going to take you right into this interface you're seeing in the second screenshot right here. And it's really as easy as importing the devices, and then in the bottom little screenshot there, assigning that appropriate device to the appropriate listing. So it's really just a couple of quick steps. Once you assign the device, that's when it's fully going to take place. The charge will take place for the device cost, which we'll get to here in just a moment, but just following those steps. And we've got help articles on all this. And Bryce, I know we're also doing a devices office hours as well that your team has been doing. So I encourage folks to take advantage of that as well, outside of the general office hours. But anything to add there, Bryce or Mike?
Yeah, I'll definitely give you a best practice here, but it is extremely easy to do this. Once you set up your accounts, whether you're doing a Yale lock with their app, or you're doing smart things with sort of that hub approach to an infrastructure, once you have all that set up and you've got your usernames and passwords, it's basically that same type of connection. All you're going to do is pick the device that you want to link. It's going to basically take you most of the time to that, that manufacturer site to do it. Again, it's like an AOF authentication, so they can share information. Boom, boom, you're done. They're connected. They import. The one thing I would highly, highly recommend, especially if you're going to do multiple properties, I learned this the hard way. You really want to put the property name first, even though you know in the different apps where it's at. Like in Smart Things, I go to a house and then I see the devices. I kind of learned the hard way, because if you don't put the name in, then you have to search generically and you have to sort of look for, like you might say, dining room light. Right now, you got to figure out which of your 5 properties or 10, which dining room light you picked. So for us, we have a property called Mulberry or Cassie. If you say Cassie dining room light, a lot easier. Because the other thing I'll add here is the devices interface to search is phenomenal. So once you get in here and you start adding your critical devices, you can search for an Ecobee, you can search for a type of product, you can type for a name. So it's a little thing, but just don't make my mistake.
Got it. Thanks, Mike. And this may be going a little bit 201 level, a little bit advanced for some folks, but you mentioned it, and I think it's worth, just educating folks a little bit if they're interested on the smart things, kind of the hubs and the hub type setup. So would you explain just kind of a simple level, what that is, and then just talk about maybe how you use it?
Yeah, you got to be careful, Bryce, because this is like my second hobby. So when you ask me to start explaining things like this could literally turn into a tech session. So
Yeah,
I'll
fair
try not
enough.
to. So I've been doing this for a long time, folks. I've even coded in this, and I can tell you, I've watched how easy this has gotten. You kind of have to decide if you want to keep it pretty basic. You want a light, a lock, and a thermostat. Then you could just hook those independently on Wi-Fi. Just basic Wi-Fi. You get those devices, you connect them. They're all independent. If you want to see everything in a hub-based app, and so one of the biggest infrastructures right now is SmartThings. SmartThings is made by Samsung. They own it. They've built it into all of their devices too. But it's the most robust hub-based system. And what I mean by that is all the same devices I just referenced, they make versions that will directly connect to the hub using a different radio frequency connection. So it's like Wi-Fi, but it's on a different frequency. So it tends to be a bit cleaner. I would only recommend getting into that if you want to do more. If you want to do a bunch of lights, or you want to hook maybe a hot tub, a thermostat. If you want to start doing more stuff and tying it all together, SmartThings does make it easier, and you're tying it all into the same hub. There are multiple hubs out there, so you kind of got to look at which one you think might be right for you. There's lots and lots of stuff out there on them. We use SmartThings because it's been around for 10 plus years, and they really I would say now it's gotten down to sort of the 101 level, Bryce. It's that easy to add things to SmartThings.
Yeah.
So, but you do need to buy a hub. So the hubs are not expensive. They're $130. You literally download the app and you tell it to search for the hub and it pops up. It's got that easy.
Gotcha. Thanks, Mike. And yeah, more of an advanced topic. So maybe folks can catch you in the user group or something if they have more questions about that.
Look, I love helping, because folks helped me out early on. I mean, we made every mistake in the book before we found Hostfully, and then we made another equal number of mistakes. But there were a number of folks like you, Bryce, that really helped us out. So as much as bandwidth allows, I'm always happy to help people.
Yeah. And for anyone that is, looking for some help just from other peers in the space, if you haven't popped over to our user group, the Hostfully user group in Facebook, definitely check that out. Really good engagement. A lot of customers there on the user group, and you can ask questions.
Awesome. Well, I think to kind of conclude things here, Mike, you did a wonderful job kind of breaking this down. And obviously, if you have anything else to add, feel free. But just to kind of summarize, I think the main priorities with Hostfully Devices is to centralize everything, of course, within one Hostfully platform, which is going to be a huge advantage, not operating outside of the Hostfully tech stack as much, but operational savings. Again, the next level guest experience, really driving more of those 5-star reviews and sticking out in the guest mind. Again, like Mike alluded to with Hilton Hotels, this is something that they're doing, and we're trying to provide that same experience within the short-term rental space. And then energy and efficiency and utility savings, that's going to be huge. And then the enhanced security. As you can see down below there, the cost of devices is only going to be $6 per device per month. When you add in the enhanced security, the energy and efficiency and utility savings, and then that 5-star guest experience, that $6 per month should be a drop in the bucket. At the end of the day, it should not be all that significant, and you should be hopefully saving more money, especially if you're using those thermostats and that $6 per device per month. But what we do have as well for everyone who has registered for this webinar, as you can see down below, is 15% off the Hostfully Devices subscription for the rest of for the first full year. So that is going to bring that cost down a little bit as well. That's going to be through the rest of this month that we're running that promotion. So if you do add those, and you'll get details in the follow-up email after this call, but you're welcome to reach out to sales@hostfully.com or your customer success manager. Reach out to someone on our team, and we'll help make sure that we get that discount applied to the back end once you start adding those devices. But Bryce, anything to add there?
Yeah, one more thought that just kind of came to mind for Mike is, if maybe folks on the call, maybe they only have one home that has a smart lock or smart device. Maybe all their properties don't. So I'm kind of curious, like, when do you jump in? Like, I mean, even if all of your properties aren't set up, does it save time? Like, does it make sense to do it then? And then also, like, do you work with your owners on really promoting smart homes, and kind of how do you upsell them into that experience for the guests? So like when to start, and then how do you push that with your owners?
Sorry, is that for me, Bryce?
Yeah. Sorry, Mike. Yeah.
Sorry, property management. So I had a guest texting.
You're getting it.
Apologies.
Yeah. So if you have just like one property with locks, and maybe your other 8 or 10 don't have a smart device, smart thermostat, smart lock, like do you start piecemeal? Like, do you just start as you have properties that have these smart devices? That's the first one. Then I'll ask you a second question.
Okay. Yeah, so we run into a mix. If we're bringing new people on board, and we just did a couple of these, we really say it's part of everything for us is about minimizing effort, right? It's operational efficiency. And so we sort of require that guests buy, the locks are not that expensive. The thermostats are pretty cheap. We can pass on the lights to start and just put motion or dusk on lights in. So we try to do homes that we're just starting with contracts. We try to do those right off the bat, because otherwise we just can't handle that control. If we've got homes, I mean, if we're owning the homes, we jump right in from the start, right? You can piecemeal it, and if you're going to do that, I would start with locks, right? And then I would move very quickly to thermostat. And again, most of the homes, either the thermostat you have will already work, or you can pick up thermostats at a fairly reasonable price these days, right? And a lot of times, I forgot to say, you can get rebates. So if you buy an Ecobee in most of the states, there's like a $75 to $150 rebate right out of the gate. So those are pretty simple. Yeah.
So that seems like that could help also, like if you're trying to convince owners, to like take their home more to the next level, those rebates and even just cost savings, reduced energy costs for them are going to help.
It's not a hard sell, because we hit on the energy piece and we hit on the safety piece, the safety and security. We don't want guests having access to the house after. I mean, our whole, again, it's 5-star reviews with as much efficiency operation as we can put together, right? So if they want us to focus on the important things, we kind of get this going right out of the gate, because I don't want to spend time dealing with lock codes, right? Or temperature problems. So it's not really a hard sell. So, and if it's your own homes, I mean, again, it just gives you that next level of control, and you get to buy some of your time back. I mean, $6 a device is not a whole lot to get back. I kind of look at it like, what is my time worth? Okay. And if my time is worth X, I almost guarantee it's many multiples of what I'm going to pay to have a few key devices running to kind of reclaim some of my, my time back.
Totally makes sense. Good.
Absolutely. And then one quick question we just had pop up here with regard to the cost of $6 per device for thermostats, but specifically for lights in this case, asking if it's per light, in which case, if it's per light bulb, I could see how that would add up. But if you got all the lights on the same switch, it's just going to be the $6 for that switch that's controlling all of those lights. So.
Yeah. And that's maybe sometimes where smart things and some of those hubs can help too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why also maybe you lean towards doing smart switches as opposed to the individual light bulbs themselves. Awesome.
Yep.
I think that's it in terms of the questions we've got. Unless people have remaining questions, feel free to toss them in the questions tab here real quick, and we'll be sure to get those answered. But while we wait on some of those, I'll also just point out for those of you who are new to the Hostfully webinars, we've got a bunch of reports and webinars and Hostfully University. So a ton of resources right at your fingertips if you do have any questions. And obviously, don't hesitate to reach out to Bryce or myself or our sales or customer support team if we can help get any of the devices or any other general questions implemented. But Bryce or Mike, anything else to add on your end?
No, I think maybe you mentioned it, but I noticed in the university, right, that there's a new 101 for devices. Did you say, and you said that already, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And the devices office hours, definitely take advantage of those as well.
Yeah, check that out. Even if you're just kind of researching and looking to make a decision on devices, you can go through a nice walkthrough of how that works, and that should be available for anyone who's in Hostfully University there.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would add for the audience as an active user, I don't typically do these kind of things. So thanks for asking. But I wouldn't do it unless, I mean, hopefully you get this in what I'm presenting, but I wouldn't do this unless it truly brought value to our operation. And it really does. And so the ability to kind of bring this stuff online. And so I would say, if you're trying to figure out if it's right for you, try it out on one property, get a lot going, and just, look at what it does for you. Because that's, we kind of eased in from whole property to whole property, but it has been sort of a game changer for us. We have bought back a lot of our time in these kind of operational, issues, challenges. That's it for me. Thanks.
Great. Well, thanks, Mike, and your real life experience is super, super helpful and valuable versus just Colter and I talking about the tech, and we see it helping people, but we're not living the day to day like you are. And so appreciate you jumping on here.
We could schedule another one of these, and we could call it the 10 things we did wrong.
There we go.
Yeah.
There you go. I like that. Don't make offers you're not willing to follow up on, Mike, because we might be hitting you up some more. This has been really helpful.
Those kind of things I find to be a lot of fun, because you miss every shot you don't take. So we take a lot of shots, and about 2 out of 10 don't work, but 8 did. So this is one that did. So there you go.
Okay.
All right.
Beautiful.
Off 10. Well, appreciate it. Thanks so much, Mike. Thanks, Colter, for guiding us through. Been a pleasure to work with both of you guys. And if anyone wants a recording, you'll be getting that of today's session. And we hope to see you soon, and take care.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Mike.
Yeah.
Follow.
Thanks for letting me do it.
Cheers.
Always.